Hey, what's up, everybody? Jeremy Donson here with thedrumprofessor.com. Per massive request, I'm going to be doing Believer by Imagine Dragons. I have so many weekly students, especially some of the youth, who absolutely love Imagine Dragons, 21 Pilots. So I've gotten several requests for this song, so I decided to do it. So here we go. So we're going to start with Believer by Imagine Dragons. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to do so below, or go to my website, thedrumprofessor.com, and you can leave any comments. You can email me directly. You can actually even just have a live one-on-one session with me, and we can go over anything that you would like to go over or learn, or show me what you got. So when you start this part, before I show it and break it down, it starts abruptly, right? There's no warning when it starts. It just goes boom. So I'll show you how to break that down, but basically just come in on the second hit so that you're not like reacting to it and maybe throw you off time. So that's what I would recommend to do. Or you could pre-count like 1, 2, ready, go, boom, and just kind of count down when to push play or the space bar, and then come in on 1. So just make sure you come in accurately, that's all, and we'll cover that here in just a second. All right, so here we go. Let's get started at the beginning. Alright, and so there we have the first verse of what he does. Now, just to give you an idea of what he does in the second verse, if you guys have heard the song a lot, I'm sure you hear some clicking sound in the second verse. So just so you know, he actually does it on the floor tom, the rim of the floor tom, or another drum if you wanted to. I personally like to do it on the hi-hat, just because, I guess. But just so you know, it's on the rim. But this is how it goes, just to show you. So if you need help with that, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to help show you how to do that. All right, so let's get started with the first verse. So first we're going to do bass and snare. Okay, bass and snare. Each one of these hit by themselves, nothing hits with it. So bass drum by itself, hi-hat by itself, snare by itself. So bass and snare, bass and snare. Okay, now once you get that, we're going to do a triplet on the floor tom. Now if you want to go into more depth later on about triplets and how to do them on time with the metronome or other songs and how they work, and a little bit deeper understanding of that, let me know. We can definitely do so in a live jam session. But for now, I'm just going to show you the tempo and speed of how this is played in the specific song in this beat. So once we do the bass and snare, you're going to go 1, 2, 3 bass, triplet bass, chocolate bass, however you want to think of it. Right? Now, be very, very careful when you do this that you do not hit a floor tom with your bass drum. You don't want to hit it 4 times. I have a lot of weekly students who they have a really huge temptation to hit the floor tom on the 4th hit with the bass, so be sure to be very careful with that. Be aware of what you're doing. It's a good idea to say it and play it, like triplet bass, triplet bass, triplet bass, or chocolate bass, or 1 in the bass, however you want to say it. 1, 2, 3 bass is fine too, but just make sure they're separate. Okay, so putting that together, you're going to go bass and snare, 1, 2, 3 bass and snare, triplet bass and snare, Okay, now you're gonna do that for 3 measures. So let me speed it up a little bit for you. Now you notice 4th measure was a little different. Also, if you have not seen any of my other videos, I'm left-handed. So if you're gonna do this and you're right-handed, I would recommend you do right hand on the hi-hat. I have some right-handed students that are like, oh, I think it's kind of cool to do this open hand, and they'll do it that way since it's like, you know, not very many hi-hats. But if you're right-handed, I'd recommend doing it right-handed. Or swing it over back to the hi-hat. Okay, so with that said, in the 4th measure, and well, let's back up for a sec. Let me show you what a measure is. So each time you do that from bass and snare to triplet, that's 1 measure. The bass that you hit right after the triplet loops it. So in other words, like it starts with the bass, right? It ends with the triplet. So when you go triplet bass, the bass is the beginning repeated again. So it's the exact same thing. So it's called looping. You go from the triplet back to the bass and you just loop it. So when you hit the bass drum, that's the beginning of the 2nd measure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, like so. So on 4, the beat changes a little bit. So instead of doing bass and snare, triplet bass, on the 4th measure, we're going to simply go bass and snare and. That's the 4th measure. That's it. Bass and snare and. That's all there is. That's it. That's 4th measure. So bass and snare and. So putting all 4 of these together, bass and snare, 1, 2, 3, bass and snare, 1, 2, 3, bass and snare, 1, 2, 3, bass and snare, and repeat the same thing again. So at tempo, it's going to sound like this. First things first. Now, once you finish that 4th measure, if you did it correctly and on time, then as soon as you finish that 4th measure, first things first, he should say first right with that bass drum, right after the 4th measure's done. So bass and snare and first things first, da, 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 right? So it goes on from there. But if you kick the bass when he says first, then you know you were on time. All right, so let's go over one more thing. So you have the 3 measures, you have the 4th measure, you understand how it repeats. We're good to go on the verse beat. Now let's go back to the very beginning when we come in, right? So you can either, like kind of like what I talked about at the beginning, you can either time when to come in, like when to push play and count yourself off. So for example, like 1, 2, ready, go, boom, and you push the space on go or something like that and then come in, then you could do it that way. But really a much easier way is just to push play, and like you saw me do at the very beginning, I just hit on the 2nd hit. So like when it goes boom, right? The very beginning when you hear that is bass. So just come in on the hi-hat or snare instead. So like for example, boom, right? Or boom. You can do that however you want, but as long as you come in on time, just practice it. What I would recommend you do is, if you listen to the music, you can hear that snare drum. So just listen to it and see, okay, boom, snare, and you kind of get used to the timing of when the snare is going to be, and just come in on the snare or the hi-hat, and just make sure you listen to the song without playing it, maybe air drumming, so you can make sure, okay, there's the snare, boom, okay, I got the timing, let's do it now. So that's a good idea of how to come in on this. All right, so guys, I hope this was super helpful for you. I love Imagine Dragons. They have so many cool songs, and like I said, if you have any questions or need any additional help, please don't hesitate to let me know. That's why I'm here, to show people how to drum. And I also have some videos on my website. I have a video for sale, $25 video, and more to come in the near future. So be sure to be checking on that periodically, and if you have any questions, man, that's why I'm here. Feel free to ask. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to have fun, stay awesome, and rock on. Later, guys.